Kwame, good morning. Yes. So before I introduce our guests, let me just quickly run through a few of our messages. Well, not messages per se, but the way we do this program. Our program is going to be in two parts. Kwame, or yes, our program is going to be in two parts. But before we do that, let me quickly go through our program goal objectives. This program hopes to ignite the interest of our students in general in agriculture, but more importantly, those who have taken agriculture as an alternative career option or as a agribusiness potential. It's a program also that we want to use, to kind of kindle the interest of the youth who have to take up agric as a career path and farming as a business, and potentially to educate them. We want to also ensure that the people who are the experts share their knowledge with us, and we all kind of, network together. Kwame, can you take us through what the first part of the program is?
Thank you very much, Senior. The first part of the program will be looking at, maybe I should say the topic first before we can.
Yes.
So the topic for today is how can or does Agric mechanization policy contribute to attaining food security? Mm-hmm. That will be the topic for today. The first part of the program will look at how Agric mechanization can impact food security, why there is a need for a policy. Yes, that will be the first part of the program.
Okay. And the second part will actually look at Ghana's mechanization policy.
Yes.
Its main objectives and how it should be implemented, monitored, evaluated, and so on.
Yes.
So a quick and brief introduction of our guest. In the studio with me today is Ɔdadeɛ Dr. Henry Enim-Somwa. He's the Director of Operations at Agromite Limited. But I'll let him introduce himself properly in a minute. Interestingly, we have another guest here, Emmanuel Ule. Yes, Emmanuel, you're welcome.
Thank you.
So please introduce yourselves properly, as I don't know what you've been doing in this world and in Ghana, especially in Agric. So I'll start with Doc.
Thank you, Senior Zonda. In the Agric space, I think I started as a farmer, went on into a little of academic work as a lecturer at University of Ghana at the Agricultural Economics and Agribusiness Department. And I moved at that time to also work in the agricultural policy space as a consultant for FAO, NEPAD, in looking at the National Agricultural Investment Plans around 7 countries in Africa. I also did some work for IFAD, International Fund for Agricultural Development, in looking at promoting interventions to address food security also across the continent. And currently, I'm looking at how we can improve elements for food self-sufficiency, especially working on local production of improved seeds, and also preparing to see how we can start some assembling of farm machinery and implements. So that's what I've been doing.
Hey, you be big man. Emmanuel, how about you?
Yes. Well, I would say that I'm a novice in Agric. I'm interested in Agric machinery, how they operate, and I'm trying to design a few Agric implements, especially for the local farmer, cheap Agric products. You realize that most imported machinery are so expensive for the basic farmer. Yeah, so I'm trying to design something with Mr. Makwene to see what contribution we can do to the national economy.
All right, thank you. Online also we have Ɔdadeɛ Patrick Ohene Abuaji. He's the Deputy Director, Agricultural Engineering Services Directorate. Patrick, can you hear me? Hello, Patrick.
Hello, Senior. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Like you rightly said, my name is Patrick.
Patrick. Hello, Patrick. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. We're not getting you very clearly. Can we hear him? Okay. Okay. Speak up, Patrick. Can you introduce yourself again? We lost you there. Hello. See. Okay. So we seem to have lost Patrick there for a moment. Patrick, can you hear me? If he's able to log back on, we'll try and get him to introduce himself again. Okay, so let's just get on with the program. Today, it's one of those topics where I don't understand, so I'm going to leave it to the experts to speak and generally try and explain things to us. Policy is hard. But over the last couple of weeks, we've been generally looking at, food production, food security, factors that lead to increased food production, and we identified mechanization as one of them. And we did talk about it, but today we really want to focus on the policy. What really pushes and guides the mechanization in the whole country, and this is why we are trying to bring in these experts today. Kwame.
Yes, sir.
Yes, so it's your field today, so I'm going to let you do most of the talking.
Okay.
Yes, so I leave it to you. What is Agric mechanization, and so lead us.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, we had a few talk on mechanization, like he said. Before you go on, I remember something about, I think it was Silsa when we were having that discussion, just talked a bit more about maybe not throwing away the hand tool and animal things and things. It reminds me that when we used to describe mechanization some time ago and the technologies involved in mechanization, at that time we had about three technologies. We had the hand tool technology, which makes I believe the cutlass and the whole as part of mechanization, including all these forks and these broad forks and things like that. We had also the animal tool mechanization, which brought in the cart, the donkeys, and the things like that.
Elephants and giraffes.
that can be used. Then we had the mechanical technology, which is what nowadays people are, concentrating on. With the tractors and machinery and things like that. And I think now we can add some more, maybe the ICT, the drones, and then all those things that are coming up in mechanization. But generally speaking, just to say that we shouldn't throw anything away because you have to look at your situation. Like he said, if you have a mountainous place and no truck or tractor can go, and if a donkey can go there, and you are bringing things with donkey, it's also mechanization. That's what I wanted to say. But we simply said that mechanization or agricultural mechanization is just referring to using machinery on farms. That's basically what we say is mechanization.
Okay. Yeah. Doc. Yes. How would you summarize mechanization for us? I mean, do you agree with what we are saying? Is it just the use of machines on the farm?
I think I agree with Kwame on looking at what he described. There are many sources that mechanization simply will look at how we apply power in achieving efficient or effective processes in a space, and especially in agriculture. And then we look at how we can use this and to really increase our productivity. The sources of power, like he said, the human being, the animal, engines, this drive the mechanization tools or implements. Unfortunately for us, in the Ghanaian context, mechanization is limited to only tillage. If you talk about mechanization in Ghana, the first thing somebody would think of is a plow a tractor and a plow. That limits it. But mechanization goes right from land clearing even to the processing of the foods that we have, where the typical one is like our corn mills is mechanization.
Okay.
The nika, the goji.
Yeah,
Nika. It's all mechanization. So
Okay.
it's a very broad space.
Mano, anything to share?
Yes,
Add?
I think I define mechanization in Agric as using a technology, a machine to fit your purpose, your climate, or your terrain in getting efficient produce.
Okay.
Mechanization, so it will involve anything. If it needs using a computer, we have robots, we have the combustion engine, we have animal, and we can also equally use human power in mechanization. We shouldn't just look at the land, we can look at water, because we do farming in water. It could be animal farming or it could be crop farming in water. So mechanization, we should see it as any machine which can give you efficient produce.
Okay, is Patrick with us? Hello, Patrick, are you with us? Hello, Patrick. He's online. How come I not getting? Hello, Patrick. Okay, so if you are saying we can use anything, you know, in the past we used to hear about people who would conjure the rain to come from the, you know, like using our own power. is that also mechanization where I can just go and call the rain? Okay, so let's move on. Generally, what is an agricultural policy and why is it important?
Dr. Suma.
Doc, yes.
Basically, agriculture policy is a set of rules or regulations that governs the practice in agriculture, and most of the time it will include issues that border on food safety, on the environment, the use of natural resources, and in some jurisdiction it would also include the food safety, quality standards, and most importantly provide incentives for certain practices. Generally, that is what agriculture policy is, and it may define how you structure and conduct agricultural trade. If we look across the globe, for example, the OECD countries.
Hey, what is OECD? Please, my listeners are ordinary people like me.
Oh, okay.
So break it down.
Okay. I think it's the group of the elite countries in the world, and they describe agriculture policy as laws, instruments, and measures that relate to the farm sector and trade in agricultural products, and basically that allows them to control how you farm, how you trade, all the restrictions on whether you can export from one jurisdiction to the other is all considered as agricultural policy. If we look at the US, and the US sees agriculture policy basically as a legislation or law that would really mediate the relationship between the farming sector, the environment, and the entire society. And this is what the US government uses to ensure that they can promote food and consumer safety, they promote international trade. For example, as part of the US ag policy that we get the wheat exports. I remember when we were in PSEC, we were getting those food aid the cheese and those things.
Kakao.
Kakao and the like. Yes, they were all part of the food policy at that time, and the drive for them is to ensure there's economic stability in the farming sector. So all the subsidies and all that comes to it. When we come more to organization, OECD's Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. When we come to Europe seems to look at agriculture policy also as laws, and there the focus is really to ensure that the future of agriculture forestry is done in a sustainable manner. You know, so the drive for the agriculture policy there is that. On the African continent, we have tried to put agriculture policy in the space of development. So the driver for agriculture policy in Africa is under the common comprehensive accelerated agriculture development plan under the AU. And there our heads of states have decided that the policy will be driven by our investments. So we've agreed that every country will spend not less than 10% of its annual budget in developing agriculture. So in a nutshell, it's a principle of laws that govern how we conduct agriculture. And in Ghana, we also have the Food and Agriculture Sector Development Policy, which is supposed to guide how we conduct agriculture business completely in Ghana.
Okay, so we are the policy, for example, if we are thinking about, let's say, Ghana's policy, it is influenced by what the regional policy is saying.
Yes, we will draw from the bigger framework, which is the CADEP framework, and then we'll narrow down to our national policy, because we have signed up to what they call the Maputo and now the Malabo declarations, where all the African heads of states agreed that this is how we want agriculture to be in Africa.
Okay, because I remember when CADEP came,
Yeah.
you know, we went for conferences, workshops. I was part of those people who went there, asked questions, and how have we gone about making sure? I mean, okay, so how, the big question is, how do we put the policy together from this CADEP? Like, how do we put our policy together?
Okay,
You can break it down a little bit.
I can break it down. CADEP,
The can-do spirit, everything I know, you can do. So, you can break it down for me, please.
okay. CADEP gave out a policy formulation process, which they look at it more from a consultative approach. So each country would have to consult the stakeholders and decide. So in Ghana, for example, all the policy framework will bring first the public institutions together. We pull, because agriculture happens to cut across many sectors. No, so we try and bring them together. We discuss the issues, and then it is coordinated in Ghana by the National Development Planning Commission. So the commission will set out what the medium term framework is, and through that we go right from national to regional to the district level in the consultations. Typically, the consultations will involve the public sector, civil society organizations, and the farmers. And at all these levels, you bring them together. The discussion will focus on issues that you want to address and the strategies that you want to use to address. So in Ghana, that's the context that we do.
I see. Kwame,
Yes, sir.
we need to have follow-up questions so that we can on how we have gone about.
No, it's
No, what about you follow? You are the experts with me. I don't know anything. Patrick, is it Patrick? Patrick, can you hear us? Patrick, he's online, but it doesn't seem like we can hear what we're saying. Hello, Patrick. Okay, let's keep trying to see if we can get him. Okay, so for me, the reason why I'm asking about how we have done this policy is because most of the time, a lot of people will ask us, why are we doing it this way? Why are we doing it that way? Or we don't understand how we are doing it. In fact, on our platform recently, some people were asking a lot of questions. Does Ghana even have a policy? But who are those involved really to come together and put the policy together? How do we go about doing this? Who determines the people that must come together, and help put the policy together?
It's the lead ministry. So in agriculture policy, to be the Ministry of Food and Agriculture. They have a policy planning, monitoring, and evaluation directorate, PPMED we call it. They would facilitate this. Typically, they will engage consultants who would be doing the drafting and the writing. In Ghana, we also engage the development partners. So there's a caucus of people that are supporting, especially on a bilateral level and multilateral level, providing support to the agriculture sector. They would also be there. And then, like we said, the ministry staff or public sector staff. So there'll be typically, because the agriculture is structured in Ghana at the local level, there'll be people from Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development. There'll be persons from Ministry of Finance. The ones that I've been involved with, there were persons also from Ministry of Trade and Industry, Science and Environment. Then we'll bring the civil society organizations. Typically, the Chamber of Agribusiness Chamber, peasant farmers, the recognizable organizations, a few private sector people. So it's a consultative process, and sometimes academia.
Okay.
So that's how it is.
I believe last week, when we're talking about nutrition and we're talking about nutrition policy, I think they really started also from the district levels, taking things from each district to come together before with this Agric policy or Mechanization policy. Does the district per se get involved in it? Because I believe every district has some peculiar when it comes to mechanization. Do you start from the districts somehow?
Yes, the approach is to do it bottom up. So the consultative process would go down to the district level, and then you try and pull it up to the national level.
Okay, so Patrick, can you hear us? Hello, Patrick.
Hello, yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. So, we've been struggling to get you online. So quickly introduce yourself again, and then we'll carry on.
Right. So my name is Patrick Ohinabuaji. I work with the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, specifically the Agricultural Engineering Directorate, Services Directorate. I happen to be an Ɔdadeɛ, finished in 1996. So I think not to waste too much time. The discussion, I've been listening to the discussion, the issue about what mechanization is. I think I just noted some few points to add to what my seniors have already mentioned. I wanted to look at it from the application of engineering principles. So just not only looking at the issue about application of machines or others. You made a point about if somebody can conjure rain. So if it is on the principle of engineering, why not? I would classify it as mechanization or engineering, specifically to the sector of agriculture.
Okay. I made that point because a few of my friends from Latte and Onukuku and Daboya, they've been telling me every time on the platform they can easily let the rain stop. So anyway, we are going to the area of policy, and we are asking about how the policy is put together, and whether the people who come to determine what should be done, are coming from the various sectors that matter. So, for example, if you look at something like roads, by all means they have to include maybe the road ministry. I'm just assuming, but we'll get right into it because I think that the government itself is the one who really sort of comes up with a policy and brings the people together to be able to form it, right?
Yeah.
Let me ask Patrick. Patrick, have you been involved in any way in how policy is done? Have you been involved in sort of a consultative committees?
Yes, I've been fortunate to be part of the technical working group or committee that supervised the formulation and preparation of Ghana's agricultural engineering policy and strategy. So the ministry got funding support from FAO to put together this policy. So FAO consulted or contracted a consultant who led the process. And so as part of his process, he engaged with all the various relevant stakeholders. Ɔdadeɛ Kwame mentioned whether we do get in touch with the district. Yes, so the consultant and ourselves engaged the district level, not only the government sector at the district level, but also the private, which is our main stakeholder, the farmers.
Okay.
It's the regional level and the national level. Then also other government agencies aside the ministry, and then also Ghana National Farmers Association, the private sector. So that is how the policy was developed by engagement of the various stakeholders.
Okay, so when this is done, after all this is done, stakeholders have been brought together. In our second part, we'll probably go a little deeper in that. But after stakeholders have been brought together and the policy has been done, who owns that policy? Who owns the policy?
Well, I think Ɔdadeɛ Sumwa said yes, the ministry or the government agency would be the first person to own it, but actually it's the whole country. It's a national document, so I would say that the whole country is supposed to own it, but because we have the ministry play a key role in terms of coordinating. If we have donor agencies coming in to pick an issue where they think that they can support, they would have to engage with the government agency. So in this case, I would say it's the ministry, but then also I'll also add that it's a national document. So every Ghanaian, I would say, would also would own it. But then the government agency will be the one at the forefront.
Okay, so Doc.
Yeah, in Ghana that is it. But in other places, for example, like I gave the example of the US or even in Morocco, it's the head of state that owns the agriculture policy. Because Morocco is an Islamic republic, the agriculture policy is the law of Allah. So it needs to be followed. So if you look across the continent, the agriculture development in Morocco supersedes every other country. Unfortunately, in our case, because we don't have that high level of ownership, most of the time the policy stays as a document.
Okay. So which means there's no need for a policy then?
No, I think we need to,
because if you've done the policy and it's just the documents in the area are not applying it,
yes,
and I think that has
been the
our
practice.
case really.
Yes, been our case.
So can we really look at the importance of policy?
Yes. For example, when you have a set of strategies and interventions to address pertinent issues in anything, let's start from your home. You know, you want your children to get a better future, so you put up a plan to educate them, right? And then you spend your money buying ice cream, toys, and things for them. Your children cannot be educated. So it's the same. Agriculture policy is important for us when we can do the things we have said over that time period to address the problems we have. In our case, we leave it as a document. So the problems we learned about agriculture when we were students here, maybe 30 years ago.
Yeah, 40 years.
40 years ago, is the same problems we are encountering as practitioners. Why? Over the years, that import with agriculture policy has not been there. But if you flip around and you look at other places, the EU Common Agriculture Policy, for example, they've reviewed it for 2023 to 2027. As of December 2021, they had pulled all the strategies, they had raised the funds to make sure that they can implement. Okay, so like we're saying, you give birth to that child, you buy an education policy so that that child can go to school, even if you are alive or you are not alive. But this is our case. We want the child to go through school to be a doctor, but we are spending our resources in buying toys and ice cream and so that is where the difficulty comes.
Let me come in here. Let me ask a question because of the you mentioned resources, and I think Boaji mentioned funding from. Is it because we also hear a lot about research, and then we asked what happened to it, because it's just there, we know about it, but it has not been implemented. And one of the reasons people gave is that you didn't fund it. The person who really gave the money for it is the owner of the thing. Is it the same with policies that maybe, I don't know, who is funding policy, and who is it because of that the funding is coming from somewhere and it's not yours, therefore it's the owners?
Simple logic says yes. He who pays the piper calls the tune.
Okay.
But in the policy arena, I think it's not the case. The government would ask for the support, for example, on the Ghana Agriculture Engineering Policy and Strategy. Government source resources from the FAO, but the formulation of the policy itself was done by the consultant, the team of technical experts, which were mainly Ghanaians, and drove that. The ownership of that document, like we said, becomes the lead ministry. But the difficulty is more with what we do with the policy. You know, that is what has been the biggest challenge. We'll have it like First Step 1 was a brilliant document that tells us what we need to do, like you mentioned, research, from production to research to marketing to the environment. Very brilliant things. I was privileged to review that document in terms of what had come on as part of a team around, I think it should be 2017 or 2016. And we realized that a lot of the things that we have said in First Step, we haven't been able to do it as a country. The value chains, the market linkages, even the application of science and technologies in agriculture, the basic genetic resources, all that well written. But when it comes to applying it, this is where the gaps are.
Okay. Patrick, your hand is up. Can we hear Patrick?
Yes, I just wanted to contribute. So, Dr. Sumwa, I think he described it well. But then one of the issues too has been the change of government. So the document is there, fine, we have the document, but then when a new government comes, in implementing or trying to solve issues, he may adopt a different approach. But then the point is that we are trying to solve the same problem. So meanwhile, the document would have outlined certain steps or certain actions that we need to take. But a particular government may decide on another route. But then, of course, we are still trying to solve the same problem. So yes, I think the problem has been has not been the document, but it has been the implementation. How we take steps to do actually what has been stated out in the document. Like I said, many a times a different government comes, he use a different approach. Another government comes, he also wants to use a different approach. But then the point is that they are trying to solve the same problem, and maybe what we need to do is how effective is the approaches? How effective is the approaches in trying to solve the problem?
It's a bit, I don't know what word, odd, because you have the same problem, you want to solve it, but the ministry doesn't really change. You want to solve the problem, you come, then you write another document, create another document, solving the same problem. It's a bit funny, you know.
You know, the policies have always been cross-sectorial, right?
Yes.
Cuts across different sectors.
Okay.
The problem we have with our policy, unlike other places, is they push it for it to be a legislation.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. So it's not just that it's a written document. Like all over the US, New Zealand, Europe, all is law.
Okay.
So when you go into the ministry, it is that law that is governing what you're doing. Your approaches and things may be different, but you don't set it aside. You can go and set the law aside. So your approaches, but in our case, like Patrick is saying, I come into government. Emmanuel, the planning commission says, when I come into government, you will need a year to settle in.
Yeah.
So all our policies and implementation strategies would overlap.
Okay.
Okay. So then when you, from one 4-year period to the other, there's an overlap of 1 year, so that you come in to prepare. So if you come and you set aside what that overlap does, then in essence, so it is for us as people of Ghana to ensure that the political parties stop doing this to us.
So it means that normally, if I understand it now, the policy ends with the ministry. If it has to be law, that means it has to go up to Parliament or something like that. It doesn't go up to Parliament at the moment. No. So it's not law.
But okay, so I know that there are Agric committees at the
Parliamentary Select Committee on Agriculture.
And basically, when you come into the districts, there are also Agric unit members.
Yes.
Who actually work, and they are supposed to use this, to work.
Document.
My I don't know. How do practitioners get to know about the policy? Are they even aware of it? Because they have to work within the policy.
Yes.
Because I don't see enough awareness creation and education on this is our policy. So when you come to, let's say, mechanization, there's a policy that helps to guide us. Don't let us forget also that it is the policy that is being implemented that will help increase the production we are talking about.
Yes.
Or am I missing something?
No, I'm not missing anything. The policy would come mainly with a dissemination plan.
It comes with a plan.
It comes with a implementation, a dissemination plan. And the few that I have been involved with, you get the document printed. The last one I did was the Investing for Food and Jobs, and the document is printed. Well, very nice document. and you go into the offices in the ministry, and it's lying in the corners, stacks of them. So I'm asking myself, how do people do it? And I think we need to improve on how we are disseminating policy. And one of it is what we're doing today. In the second part, we're going to talk about what the strategies are, what are there. We need to do a lot more of that. I remember I was on an interview panel, and at that time, our investment plan, which happens to be the main policy framework for developing agriculture in the country, Mechanization. I asked the candidate, what is Mechanization? And he threw back the question, is it a fungicide or insecticide? So there's a need for us to really push it out, not only to the private sector, but more so to the civil society.
Okay, Patrick, your hand is up.
Yeah. So how does we get disseminated? How do we get it disseminated? I think in recent times we've been using the policy fairs. So at the policy fair, the ministry, who is the lead agency of government in a particular sector, would come and present what policy issues that they are trying to tackle, and what are the framework, or what are the areas that the policy seeks to support, and what are some of the interventions within the policy. So through the policy fairs, that information is also shared. And then I think, in the second part of the policy, so we have outlined other, apart from the policy fairs, you can engage through using media engagement, as we are doing, also using the annual reports, policy briefs, etc., as a way of also communicating what has been is set out in the policy. I think some of the policy ends up at Parliament. I think I'm not too sure, but I stand to be corrected. The tree crop. I think there's a tree crop policy. There's also, I think, the fertilizer policy also. Some of them gets up to Parliament to be passed into a bill, especially when it has to do with the regulatory issues. So some of them do get to Parliament, but also some of the sub-sector policies. So for instance, if it's crop or if it's mechanization in sub-sector, but then when it is FASTEP, the food and agricultural subsector policy, that one is a sector policy, but then there are others that come under it, and those ones, normally the subsector policies do not get to Parliament, but the broader policies, I think, sometimes do get to Parliament. So that is what I wanted to contribute.
Okay, Emmanuel.
Yes, with what Patrick is saying, I just wanted to know, do we find such things on the Ministry of Agriculture website? Because I've tried to fish out certain information from Ministry of Agriculture website, and I don't see anything.
Well, I'm not from the ministry, so
Yeah, Patrick is.
Patrick, can you help us with that?
I think the FASTEP should be there, which is the main sector policy. I think it should be there. The investment plan, the Mechanization, I think also should be there. The investment, the IFJ, that Dr. Suma made mention of it, I think it's also there. Even if it's not there, it should be online. These documents are mostly online. So even if you don't go to the website and then you just Google in Ministry of Food and Agriculture policy, some of these documents will pop up.
Yes, because FASTEP and CADEP has always been around, as far as I remember. I can't remember the years, but I know that at least from around 2015, CADEP was still, circulated around. At some point, I had a document. So listeners, you can join us with your contributions, comments, or suggestions on 02000 92 92 5, and Instagram at Ɔdadeɛ Radio or Facebook Ɔdadeɛ Radio at Ɔdadeɛ Radio Ghana. We'll go on a short break, and when we come back, we'll start looking at if Ghana has a real mechanization policy.
Ɔdadeɛ Radio. Like us on Facebook at Ɔdadeɛ Radio. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Ɔdadeɛ Radio. You can WhatsApp or call us on 0200 092925.
Agriculture plays a crucial role to our country's development with a huge contribution to Ghana's GDP whilst providing for our food needs at the same time.
They should know that Agric is the backbone of every country. Honestly, you began by giving us the percentages, but it used to be 70% that Agric contributes to the economy. It's because of certain lapses that has made a figure decline.
I don't know why they see farming as a bad occupation, because in other developed countries, they take Agric very seriously and they make a lot of money out of farming. They use a lot of modern technology to improve their yield, but over here we only see it as the use of certain man-made or small implements such as cutlass and hoe, which don't really do much. If you want to go into mass production, which will bring you a lot of money, you use a lot of modern technology that will help improve the yield.
Time to put the spotlight on agriculture value chain in Ghana on Agric Panorama on Ɔdadeɛ Radio. Agric Panorama is a radio program that is aimed at creating a unique platform for all farmers, traders, processors, transporters, wholesalers, and all other actors within the agric value chain. Agric experts, policymakers, students in agriculture, and other stakeholders as they participate in a panel discussion to unravel other matters to improve agriculture and agribusiness sector, which is the backbone of Ghana's economy.
It's beneficial to the country in the sense that the non-companies in this country, the products these companies bring out are from Agric, or the raw products are from Agric, which has been processed into finished goods.
With Agric, as I was coming, I wanted to do biology, but my grandfather was the person who told me that, why don't you try agriculture? Because I'm a farmer, and look at where I am. So you can also try agriculture, and then you can see how far you'll go.
Agric Panorama will be broadcast live from the studios of Ɔdadeɛ Radio Online every Saturday from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. You can listen and contribute to this program via the Zeno FM radio app or Ɔdadeɛ Radio app from the Google Play Store or App Store. Also watch it live on YouTube or Facebook at Ɔdadeɛ Radio or Ɔdadeɛ Radio Ghana. Ɔdadeɛ Radio, shine the light.
Say no to single-use plastic bags. They are destroying our environment. Water bodies contribute to most of the rubbish in open spaces and gutters, contributing to floods. Fish and livestock are ingesting plastics, which poses danger to our health. Plastics take ages to decompose and are harmful to the environment. Be responsible. Join eco-conscious citizens in supporting International Plastic Bag Free Day and say no to plastic bags. Use a basket, jute bag, or other biodegradable bags on 3rd July and every other day.
What does the Bible say? And what sort of light does it throw on any life-related issue? John chapter 1 verse 5 states, "And the light shineth in darkness, and darkness comprehended it not." Light for Life is a Christian panel discussion program on all life-related issues and how the Bible helps us in its day-to-day application. Beloved, my name is Reverend Godwin Kwashi, and I invite you to join me and my guests on the Light for Life program on Ɔdadeɛ Radio Online this and every Sunday from 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. I trust that as we engage in this Light for Life program, we'll all be able to say to our God, in thy light we shall see light. God richly bless you as you tune in.
I don't know what I would do without him. Whom shall I fear?
Ɔdadeɛ Radio. Like us on Facebook at Ɔdadeɛ Radio. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Ɔdadeɛ Radio. You can WhatsApp or call us on 0200 092925.
Okay, so welcome back to our listeners. As I said before the break, if you want to send in your comments, contributions, suggestions, our WhatsApp and SMS number is 02000 92 925. On Instagram and Twitter at Ɔdadeɛ Radio, Facebook Ɔdadeɛ Radio, or at Ɔdadeɛ Radio Ghana. Okay, so quickly, I mean, we are having a discussion on the break. And one of the things that I was asking is that how does the policy actually help with our food production, to help us increase food production? And I asked this because the policy has been done. It is there with the directors and the supposedly implementers who are supposed to implement the policy. But for me as a practitioner on the ground, was I consulted? Does it work for me? How do I manage to help, in the process of implementing this policy that allows me to increase my production? That's what I want to know. I've asked too many questions.
You've had, I think you've asked the pertinent questions.
Yeah.
If we take the agriculture engineering policy and strategy, for example, it's well documented that it may, or it can, let me put it right, it can, in the documented process, it can increase productivity. It will be able to help us address some of the challenges we have in terms of, let's say, the technologies available, capacity of the institutions that are engaged in training, looking for finance, research, and all that. It stops only at that strategy. It won't tell Kwame and Emmanuel how they can assess that support that the policy says support the assembling of agricultural implements in Ghana. The policy doesn't even tell government what to do. But in other jurisdictions, the policy will be explicit, clearly, that if you want to support assembling, provide tax incentive X. Or, like the Asians are doing, they provide basic infrastructure. You go, there's a workshop. So the policy to support manufacturing comes with this. Government puts a workshop at the district level. You go, you rent, the equipment is there, you do it. So our policy hangs, and therefore you put it in the hands of the ministry, and it's difficult for them to implement. They say go and fetch water and come. They don't give you a bucket. They don't give you a pail.
They don't tell you where to fetch the
they
water
don't,
from.
Yeah, they don't even tell you to fetch the water. So they say go and fetch water
maybe
and come.
there's even no water. So okay, so I think that we've all been waiting for this question, and let us ask, because with what you are saying, let me ask the direct question: does Ghana have an agricultural engineering or mechanization policy? Do we have one?
Maybe Patrick should answer this.
Patrick, where are you? Hello, Patrick. Hey, Patrick, I was asking the question. No, he has vanished.
He has vanished. Okay.
Patrick.
Yes.
Patrick.
No, I've not vanished. I'm here.
He's here. Okay, Patrick. Okay, thank you very much, Patrick. Does Ghana have an agricultural engineering or mechanization policy?
To some extent, I would say yes. We have a draft policy document. Even though it is finalized, printed, I would want to still call it draft because it has not been launched. If it gets launched by the top management of the ministry, then I can boldly say we have a document on agricultural engineering in Ghana. But maybe I can give a background to that. Several years ago, the ministry was supporting the sector with various interventions. These interventions were not well documented, and they were, as different government comes in, they were doing different things without being necessarily documented in a document. And so FAO at a point brought in some experts from some government officials from Togo and Ethiopia. They wanted to learn about what Ghana is doing in terms of agricultural mechanization, because they are heard about Ghana implementing or Ghana promoting the establishment of agricultural mechanization service centers, what we call the AMSECs. So they wanted to know whether we have documented that strategy. And it turns out that we did not have a document to that effect. And so the decision was taken that let's get a document to get all these things in place, so that when we even have development partners, they want to come and help us, they know what the issues are and what we intend to do about the issues. So this document was prepared starting, I think, 2019. It's been done now. So we are waiting for the top management of the ministry to get it launched, and then it becomes a document for the ministry. So yes, there's a draft document in place waiting to be launched, so that we have a Ghana agricultural engineering policy and strategy.
But you said somebody had to come and ask, and when they asked, they found that we didn't have it written down. So all these years, how have we been working without a written policy document on agricultural engineering or mechanization?
Okay, so we had like I said, we have a broader policy. In policy, you want to consider them as two. So maybe the first one would be the broader sector policy, which I think in the past segment I tried to explain. So we have the broad sector policy. In there, we had issues, or we had areas where it touches on mechanization or agricultural engineering. Then the second stage is to have the subsector policy. So when you talk about engineering issues in agriculture, then you also have a policy on it, and that is what has been done. But initially, it was the FASDEP that was which brought on board some of the issues on mechanization. So when you pick the FASDEP, you have some issues or some reference on mechanization.
Okay, so this policy, has it got a name? What do we call it? Because I keep hearing agricultural engineering, I keep saying mechanization policy. What do we call the policy, so that I can get the name right?
So the name is Ghana Agricultural Engineering Policy and Strategy.
Okay, so it's an engineering policy.
Yes.
Incorporated in there is the mechanization policy.
Yes.
Okay.
Because mechanization is just one element of engineering when you talk about agriculture. Okay. So there are other things that are taken on board when you are talking about engineering policy. So mechanization is just one aspect of it.
Okay, so Patrick, let's discuss some of the highlights or the areas of this policy, since it's a draft and not yet in the public domain. Can we discuss some of the highlights? And one of the things I really want us to look at is crop production. How does this policy influence crop production? Patrick?
Yes.
Yes, I was asking that let us look a little bit at the highlights of the the policy, and I'm zooming in on crop production. Since I don't have the policy in front of me to be able to know the specific areas. Can we look at,
Okay, so when we talk about crop production, we have an item which seeks to say, okay, so crop mechanization policy issues and strategies. So under crop production, what are some of the issues that will hinder crop production? And then if those issues are stated, then we can have the strategies to deal with those issues. So some of the issues that are considered under crop production is, for instance, inadequate supply of appropriate ag machines and equipment for production under crop. So that is an issue there. Another issue that comes up is the lack of agricultural machinery import, regulatory and operation systems as an issue. Then also, still under crop production, there's also inadequate and poor processing infrastructure. So even after you've had all those equipment to go into production, what do you do with the after harvest processing? Can we go into processing? What are the issues there? Do you have the infrastructure? What are the issues there? So then also even talking about transportation and handling systems of the perishable crops. Do you have some strategies there to deal with those issues of handling of perishable crops? Then also, do you have even storage facilities for the various crops after production, after harvest? Do you have a storage area for them? What are the issues with them? And then what are the strategies to deal with them? So these are some of the highlights under crop mechanization policy and then strategies.
Okay, so Brandon, you wanted to ask a question?
Yes, I would like to ask that since it's a draft, has it been put to any form of test so that if there are certain things which can be ironed out before it comes into full implementation?
Yes, it has. There's a validation process. So I think there was a validation workshop as part of the process of formulating. So that's what.
These workshops, the workshops, when they go and they finish, everything stays in the workshop. But who gets to hear about what was said and what should be done? I want to ask.
Oh no, you in the validation workshop, you need to take the proceedings, you develop it, it's communicated to the technical committee. The consultant who is supposed to do the drafting will take that, revise it, and then it comes to back to the technical committee to make sure that those inputs have been incorporated.
I believe what Wule is asking, for example, that we talked just now about the crop production. Did you go to some farm to check or something, actual things to see whether yes, these are the actuals on the ground, so that we can
yes, but I also want Doc to really consider what he had just said, that the policy hangs at some point.
Yes.
Because I wanted to know how much
it doesn't get down.
It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't get down. So in Patrick's highlighting of some of these areas, I wanted him to just take one example and walk us through to see how well it goes down to the practitioner.
Yes.
So if, for example, you are talking about crop production, I've produced, like we saw in maize, there's large quantities sitting in the production areas. Okay, the issues are that they even don't have enough, the roads and network are not there for them to bring the produce to the markets. Storage.
They can't even dry it properly.
So how does this policy address those issues? This is just a policy where we have looked at, because it keeps saying we need this, we must do this, we must do that. What about the how? Patrick, does the policy address the how?
So the policy is one stage of solving the problems.
Yeah.
So after developing the policy, then you also pick you may have to develop another document maybe a work plan.
Did you say may?
Okay, a work plan.
Did you say may?
Sorry?
No, did you say may? You may have to, or they have developed a work plan.
The policy that we are discussing has not even been launched in the first place.
Okay.
I just told you about it being the draft stage.
Yes, yes. But I was asking that while doing the draft, are they considering how it will be implemented and how it will get to the practitioner?
So that's what I'm trying to explain to you.
I'm sorry, please go ahead.
Let's take an example. So an issue of inadequate supply of appropriate machinery for crop production. So the one of the strategies is that provide farmer targeted incentives for acquisition and utilization of machinery, irrespective of state import or private import. So what it means is that if I, as a farmer, I import an agricultural machinery into the country, there's a tax exemption for me, and that one is by law.
Okay.
And it is being done now. So that is an incentive for the farmer if he's importing an equipment.
And how do they identify what? So for example, solar panels. Solar panels that are being imported in the country, there's still tax on it.
Yeah, but solar panels are not exclusively used for agriculture. So you have to justify. There's a system in place that you may have to use. You have to justify.
But how would you use a solar? How would you use a solar pump, for example, if you don't have the solar panel?
Yeah, I'm saying that you just mentioned solar panels. You didn't say solar panels and the pumps.
Well,
so that's why I said
okay. I'm sorry. I mean, that's what I'm driving at. Like when you have to use solar, for example, on your farm, even for electricity, you will need you need the panels. You know, so if I put a farmhouse somewhere in, let's say, the north, where there's no light on my farm, and I'm using a solar panel to get my lighting system and my pump. From the person I'm going to buy the panels from, it's expensive because he's bringing in those panels, and I'm saying, how does the policy look at that whole segment? Because he's looked at as a businessman bringing in solar panels, and he's taxed.
Yes, so that's why I said there's a system, so you would have to apply, because in the first place, anybody at all can request for a solar panel or can import in a solar panel, but then you have to justify. So the justification is through making a specific application. You apply that I am a farmer in this area, and then I'm bringing in a solar panel for this purpose.
Yeah, but
I'm
sorry, Patrick, but the farmers themselves won't do that importation. I mean, I'm a peasant farmer, farming somewhere, and they are saying there's new technology, solar pumps. I will be looking at the pumps and just going to buy the solar pump. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm not going to write an application to say I want to buy a solar pump on my farm, so let me write to the ministry before I can go and buy the pump. Practically. So that's where I'm having a little difficulty in understanding how the policy is going to work. If you are looking at specific areas in the whole industry or the value chain, you know, we are just looking. I just mentioned the panel as an example, but there are other examples. You know.
So basically, what I'm saying that maybe can you write? I mean, if you are importing, that is okay, but if you're going to buy it in a shop, I don't know whether you can. The guy can go and get his duty back once he has finished paying it. Sometimes that's where you are getting to.
Yes,
the things in the shop.
For me, as a practitioner,
yeah,
I'm looking at how I will use the equipment. Do you understand me? Yeah. And the equipment that I want to use must favor me.
Yeah.
So the technology is that you can use a solar pump, you know. And so my reasoning is that let me go and buy a solar pump that I can use. But at that point, I'm buying. What is the connection between
that one and farming?
The policy.
Okay. So what the policy takes into consideration is the imports. Okay. Is the imports, not because if it's not import, if that aspect of the tax is not waived whilst importing, the supplier would definitely add on that cost to the person buying from the local market. Okay. So at least that aspect is taken off, and it comes a bit affordable for the person in Ghana who walks to the shop to buy. The policy does not say that when you are an individual or when a group, you are going to buy from the shop, there's a tax rebate for you. For now, the policy is not has not considered that.
Yeah.
What it considers is the imports, and thereby making it more affordable for the person who is buying locally.
Doc, you wanted to make an intervention at some point.
Yes, there are two things that we need to take note. Like I said, our policy always stop at the strategy, and Patrick is adding that when we go through that phase, then we bring the implementation plans and all that. I think that as best practice, we need to go through that stage before we can really say it is the policy, because that's the only stage we can address the issues that Kwame and Emmanuel are raising. How do we test it if we don't have the implementation arrangement? So it's important for us to note that yes, it's a process. At this stage, we have started the process, like in terms of agricultural engineering. We have started the process, and that process will require additional things for the practitioners to benefit. And so the problem that we have is that, like, this was done finalized in 2020. Okay, but yes, but it still hasn't been gone through the processes to make sure that we can benefit from it. So it's important we do that. In other places, as the good practice, we want this policy to start next year. It will be done a year or two, and all these implementation arrangements will be put in place. So once you launch the policy, it can work. And I think is one of the things that we need to look at in all our policies in this country. So we have a document, but we don't have a policy.
I see.
If I answer your question, we have a policy document, but we don't have a policy.
Okay, so I know I'm putting Patrick on the line, but Patrick. Hello, Patrick.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, so the engineering policy as it stands now, what are the specific areas it looks at? I mean, I know we have talked about crop production. There are areas of manufacturing, there are areas of animal husbandry, there are areas of financing, and training, and maybe even research. Can you just throw some light on these areas?
Yeah, so so for animal husbandry, there are also some issues there with regards to the engineering input supply for livestock. There's also the inadequate supply of biomedical engineering inputs. There's also issue with regulation of factory operations. Some issues to do with breeding facilities, and then also feed preparation plants, amongst others. And then even inadequate and poor slaughterhouse and processing infrastructures are also considered. And then the low and high quality of feeding equipment. Then you come to fishery or fishing and fish farming engineering. It also looks at the input supply, and then also production, and then post-harvest management with regards to the housing, with regards to infrastructure. Then it also talks about machine supply in general and service provision. What are some of the issues that are confronted with if you're a service provider or you have an equipment? What are some of the issues that you are maybe facing you or is facing owners? So the low skill level of operators, poor maintenance culture and repair of machinery, poor conditions of service of these operators. So they are not well motivated to give out their best. Then poor management of service provision centers, and then also some of these centers are also under resourced. So these are some of the issues that are highlighted under the supply. It also looks at some cross-cutting issues. With regards to electricity, environmental degradation, poor management of our lands, which affects the equipment on the farm. It also looks at the different scale of machinery, so whether handheld, at a different scale, so medium, large scale, and then so these are some of the issues that are highlighted in the document.
Okay, Patrick. Yes, thank you very much. If I understand how the document, from what you're saying, I think the document is it actually brings out the issues, and then it looks at the issues, and then bring out a strategy saying that these are the issues, this is what we are going to do, or this is what you're supposed to do with these issues. And then the last part will be like give some recommendations that we'll have to do, if that's the structure. Is that right? Is that how is the policy is broken down into?
So I think Dr. Sumar tried to explain. So at this stage, what the document presents is the issues and the strategies.
Okay.
Now for the in terms of implementing,
yes.
Now these strategies will have to be fed into the broad term or the annual or medium term plans of the ministry with its budget allocation.
Okay. Okay.
So for now, in the document, it's just the strategies, the ideas. Now, how do we implement those ideas on the field? And those ones has to be teased out into the annual or medium-term plan with the necessary budget allocations for implementation.
Oh, I see. So a quick one. How does the policy look at how it will be disseminated? For example.
Typically, yes, there will be a dissemination plan.
But as at now, we don't know it.
No, it is. It is here. It has an implementation plan and then a communication strategy. Yes. Chapter 5 has the implementation arrangement with a plan, and then the various institutional roles and responsibilities that. So, for instance, we talk about cabinet and parliament. Now, in here it says parliament is also expected to pass the appropriation bill, taking into consideration this policy. So, if the ministry presents its work plan to Parliament for appropriation of the bill, they have to make sure that the issues that the ministry, the plan at that level, fits into this policy.
Yeah. Okay.
So that is it. Yes, that is it. And then it has the various other agencies, the community level, development partners, the district level. And then it also has its communication strategy. I think we talked about the communication in the first part. So how is going to communicate to your good selves, how is going to communicate to others, local level, national level, regional level. What are some of the tools that is going to use to engage its audience in terms of disseminating the document?
Yeah. Okay. Let me ask a bit more specific with the implementation. For example, let's say we wanted to do something, so we plan it. Is there in your plan maybe a workshop that will be built for people, for schools, or people who want to do something that can go and access with a few maybe technical help from for example, I think I did my national service at Somia, and then that place was something like that for it, where you could go and they had all the machinery and things. I think by now it's changed, but they had all the toolings that if you wanted to do something, you can go and with the help of the engineers come together and do something like that. That would be one. The other thing, would there be training schools for mechanics and then operators, or all that should be something that you have to get some private people to come on board to create for you? Is government going to do that, or is going to be something that you have to make the private sector lead in the policy?
I think we are not getting into specifics, so I don't seem to really get a hold on. Yes, I mean, if we can get into some specifics that allows us to see, for example, how do we see this policy helping in the increase in food production? How
it's broad.
I know it's broad, but I'm just, if we can just dive into an area where it can throw some light, because of course, as you are implementing, you must also be evaluating to see, you must be monitoring. Okay, so as we are saying that this is a draft, doesn't yes, but there must be there's a strategy to help us clearly see that this policy will help us if we do ABCD to increase food production. I'm not hearing that. Mm-hmm. That seems to be missing.
Okay, so
so I okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, you can go ahead.
No, you go.
All right. So I think it's we have discussed some in the previously. So crop production. Let's say we take rice. We want to increase rice production. We want to cut down on rice importation. So what are some of the issues with regards to rice production when you talk about mechanization or engineering? Mm-hmm. So there's limited areas for even producing the rice, the areas. So what do? We're talking about engaging or talking about clearing the land. We need to clear the land with equipment to clear the land to make the land more accessible. And then also the equipment or the machinery, are they available? So when you get the machine on time, you're able to prepare your seed bed, and then it is also way of planting mechanically. Because if you are depending on the rain, and then you are going to plant manually, time is of essence, and therefore if you have access to, let's say, an equipment, a tractor or a planting equipment, you would be able to how do you call it? Then even talking about crop management, crop protection. If you want to apply chemical, can you apply? You talked about drones. Can you use drones to do that? Yes, if you're able to use that, then production is going to go high. Then even harvesting, harvesting is also a very intensive job, and it end up with a high post-harvest losses. So if you have the right equipment, you can mitigate that, and that also leads to production, increase in production. And then about processing, or even private processing. The mills, do you have good mills? Because people want to eat good rice, good quality rice without stones. Do you have good mills? The mills there, we are also promoting, the strategy is talking about installation of good mills, efficient mills that will be able to process the rice for consumption. So when all these steps are done, then of course it will then we'll have the increase in the crop production that we are looking for. We are also not looking at only just the equipment. Kwame also mentioned about developing local fabrication. Well, government is not only looking at doing it by itself, but it's also engaging the private sector. So in the document, it talks about areas where we can collaborate with the private sector to develop prototypes, local manufacture. It talks about, one of the issues that it mentions is lack of facilities and infrastructure for the manufacture. So the strategy is to provide modern infrastructure and facilities for local production. Then even talking about the grade of steel for manufacture, we have good grade steel for manufacture. It talks about also upgrading the existing steel mills to modern standards, that they can produce a quality that we need. And then also providing state incentives for the and support for local manufacturing. And so what are some of the incentives that we can use to support, build the local fabrication? So we don't only be dependent on imported equipment, but then we can also have the local base developed. And then it talks about the human resource development also, providing resources for practical training, engaging the private sector in terms of building capacities of the operators and then the fabricators, etc. So I think I'll leave it for I'll stop for Dr. Soma to also
let me, you see, I don't know. I was trying to get to specific, like you said, training and things. Then we need to. Who is we? Is government going to provide these things, or is it asking that some schools, or a bit more specific, that what is the plan, or it's just a broad plan, and then we have to now look to sort of implement it. That's where, Doctor, I'm trying to get it. If it's schools, if it's training, if it's the machinery, providing machinery, how we provide the machine? Is it the AMSEC again, or those type of specifics? That's what I'm trying to get to.
Okay, I think where we have gotten with this particular engineering policy, we are not at that level yet.
Okay.
And that's one of the things that we need to carry forward here. The policy outlines these strategies nicely, but there's no mechanism to now implement them. So we wait for donors. For example, you raised the training with the issue with training.
Yeah.
Today I know GIZ is helping, and occasionally they will do a 2-day residential practical training, 3-day, 1 week, depending on the season. It's very ad hoc. Okay, they do it. I think they also supported training of women for a period.
Mm-hmm.
So the policy stops there at that strategy. So when a donor comes and he finds it, then he picks it up. So this is where the policy, like Patrick is talking about what Senior Zonda was asking, how can this policy help us increase crop production? Okay, it just outlines strategy.
Okay.
So the how is missing, and that's what we need to deal with. So
there are difficult areas
yes.
and bottlenecks.
Yes.
So now with hindsight, if we are saying we want to look at the policy that is supposed to come and help us implement and do the things right. Because we identifying the things we need to do there, we know.
Yes.
For example, we need road infrastructure.
Yes.
Go and bring, and then we need a transport system
yes.
that will bring food from producing areas.
Yes.
How are we implementing?
Exactly.
If there's a policy towards this, what are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to do it? When are we supposed to do it? Who are supposed to do it?
Who's paying for it?
Who's paying for it?
Are we making money for it?
So all these years that we have been doing Agric, because they are working. If you go to Somenya or Dodua, the how do you call it? They are directors. They are working, and they are being given guidelines as to what they should do. You understand? So if this policy is supposed to come and improve and help us increase food production, why can't the policy state it clearly, or it's there and then we don't know how to do it? That is where I can't seem to grasp. Because we keep to talk about policy, but it's the implementation we want to see. As a practitioner, I'm a farmer, a new policy is coming. How is it addressing it in such a way that it will help me, the person on the farm, working to increase my production? That's what I want to.
I'm a farmer, I'm all working. I mean, if I have a problem, does it tell me I have to go to this place so that you've set up extension distance, especially when it comes to engineering? If I have a problem, what should I go to the universities? Or it should be something that we know. If I need machinery, like the AMSEC was something else. Should I go and register with this place, and who is doing that? You know, these are the things that we're hoping us people in farming will want to hear, that we can
I think we are not there yet, and it's partly what I have learned from this is that in developing our policies, we always want to go and touch everything superficially, and therefore it becomes too difficult to go down to what's. But if we have like in other places, we phase out how we want to deal with our problems and start off. For example, when Brazil wanted to deal with mechanization, it started off by saying, let's bring in equipment for specific things. From period A to B, we'll do importation. From period B to C, we will support local manufacturing. These are the incentives. From period E to F, we'll promote export of our manufactured things, which we Ghana are benefiting from today with the Brazilian program for One Food. So they are exporting a huge amount of equipment from Brazil to us. So it's purposeful. You bring in the equipment, you learn how to manufacture it, now you support it to go outside. Okay. But we stop. And people like Patrick and the directors at the district, they can't implement this.
But Doc, weren't you part of this process?
I have been part of this process.
So what
But
you are telling us now, why don't you raise these?
I have no power. In this country, unfortunately, we have ceded all the power to the political machinery.
Yes, okay, so let me rephrase my question. We are talking about the policy really going down and being disseminated and implemented by the practitioner. And you are saying that usually there are strategies. So between the strategies that have been drawn and getting it to the person who is going to be part of the process so that it helps him to increase his production, there's a missing link.
Yes.
So how do we get there? I mean, if you are part of the people drafting the policy, perhaps you bring that attention that, okay, so what are we supposed to do at this level, for example, to ensure that the person who is down on he gets roads, or this particular road must be done, and this is how and when we want it done. You know, if it's the distribution of fertilizer, we always see there's a strategy to get us subsidized fertilizer, but farmers don't get it. Doesn't the policy address an issue like that?
The policy will address that issue. For example, you raise an interesting point. I don't have a copy of the Investing for Food and Jobs. In the Investing for Food and Jobs, we drill it down to what we call the policy instrument. For example, with all these policies to fix a problem. So we take it down and say, if you want to fix the problem for roads, you have to do with, let's say, the district assembly. So you need to provide this resource to the district assembly as government, and the district assembly can use it to fix the road. That is what you see across all policies. Like we're talking about the new European Union's Common Agriculture Policy. It says we want to drive sustainability. So if you have anything to do at the rural level that is going to help improve biodiversity, let each farm maintain 3% of the arable farmland and not destroy it. I support you with X amount. If you want to increase it from 3 to 7, I support you with Y amount. So the practitioner sees the policy. So I have 100 acres. I keep 3 acres intact. I let the bees come in there. I have snails there. I have this. I support biology. I have a process to apply to government, and government supports me. But in our case, we just leave it hanging. So that has been the main problem, and it's not only peculiar to Ghana, across the continent. If you take the CADEP framework, it's the same. It says spend 10%. That's all. So a government A can decide I'm spending the 10% on traveling for workshops and all that. So if you look at the agriculture expenditure review, you see that yes, I've spent the 10%, but did it contribute to food security, or did it contribute? And it's so vague that I attend a workshop in Rome on food security, and I can account for it that it has contributed to food security in Ghana. I only take my per diem, sit there. I come to Ghana, I do nothing.
Patrick. Hello, Patrick.
Yes. Hello.
Yes, Patrick, can you tell me how this policy will be monitored and evaluated?
Okay, so I think it also has the KPIs in the document. It has that chapter on monitoring and evaluation. It has the KPIs, the key strategies, and then the performance indicators that are to be looked out for. And it also says that it's going to use the existing structure of government to do the M&E. It has so under all the various objectives and the strategies, it has the KPIs for them. Example is making all machinery and equipment required for production available. So it talks about the KPI it talks about number of machinery available to farmers increased. So it has a baseline at a certain point, and then at another point it will have the actual to know whether there's an improvement or there's no improvement. So all those areas are there to be assessed.
I see. Is there any part of the policy where that would want reviewed or advanced or changed to ensure that it really is helping Doc?
Yes, I think under the sorry.
Go ahead.
Patrick,
you go ahead.
Patrick, you go ahead. Yeah, Doc said it.
Yeah, so under the existing structure, there's a time frame for reviews of existing policy of the ministry, and this document probably would also go through the same process of that reviews. I think they have the 3 year, then they have the 5 years reviews of policies implementation. So at that level, they will review. It will be reviewed, and where it needs to be taken out or where it needs to be added on, that will be done.
Yes, Doc.
Yeah, I wanted to add that we have what we call the annual sector review, where the whole sector, based on so if this policy gets launched and becomes part of the ministry's M&E framework, then it will be reviewed annually, because we do the agriculture performance review, and this will be part of it.
I'm a bit confused about this. So if I'm understanding it rightly, this document is going to be a document that will be there when launched. We are supposed, as a country, as people, to take it up, look at it, and then the implementation distance. Maybe we can come in and start suggesting how we will do it, and then that's how it's going to work. Is that how it's being looked at? So, for example, let me take mechanization and let's say the crops and the machinery, availability of machinery. Your problem is, I heard Patrick say, inadequate machinery. That's your problem. So I look at it, and then there is I think there was a strategy that you should have. You should have so and so machinery in the country at that. Okay, and then the follow up or the monitoring will see at the end of the year how many machines have come into the country.
Yes.
And that's it. Now, having the machinery, who will bring it, who will do things like that, is missing. Is it by us looking at it as a private people, as businessmen or something, and then go and say, government, you said this, you wanted machinery, you wanted this, I have this, I can do this, and therefore I don't know, ask for support, or I'm trying to get how the implementation proper will come in. I can add, let's say, okay, government, you have this machinery, you need training, like you said, GIZ, I want to train people. You know, the implementation for me, it's my head confused about it a bit.
So typically what would happen is that let's say IFAD, or in most of what happens in Ghana, or FAO would want to say, okay, we want to support a mechanization program in Africa.
Okay.
We have this X amount. For example, I think the FAO did something like that in the front plains.
Okay.
So when they come, Donkokrom, yeah. So the FAO comes to Ghana, and then Ghana goes to this document and says, oh, we have provide farmer targeted incentives for acquisition and utilization of agricultural machinery and equipment.
Okay.
So it fits in our strategy. So we sit with FAO and we say, okay, we need these tractors, this, that, and then FAO supports us.
Okay.
So that's how the implementation goes. Most of our strategies are implemented through donor provision. On the flip side, we could also say, well, today the government of Ghana says, I have this fund. I want to use it to support this strategy. The mechanism I want to use is through commercial banks, local import, or equipment that is assembled in Ghana. For example, that's what the Indians have done. And today, India is the largest manufacturer of mid-range tractors from 35 horsepower to 110 horsepower. In their national development plan, they strategically did that. So they started off with importing tractors from everywhere, 1965 thereabout. And they started manufacturing. Thailand has done the same. So for us, we need to push our policy development in a manner that it sets us in a framework to look beyond the one-term political regime. That's been one of the big issues with policy in Ghana. So that over the years, we don't build on. Everybody comes and he wants to start afresh. You know, so we need it. Because if you look at these strategies that I've outlined here, if we do an implementation plan over the next 20, 30 years and say we want to start with A and get to B and get to C, by the time our children come, these problems would have been solved.
And this is not in our draft.
Yes, and this is what every other country has done. So I don't see why we think Willie did this plan. When I come, I throw it out. I do my plan. When Kwame comes, he does his plan. So we just keep going on this vicious cycle of planning and planning and planning and
so
planning.
This year to come draft, we
Yes.
don't have this thing in there.
No, we don't have it.
We don't have it. Okay, so let me put our numbers out there again. If you want to send us a message, contribute, or ask a question, our WhatsApp number is 02000 92 925. On Instagram and Twitter, it's at Ɔdadeɛ Radio, Facebook Ɔdadeɛ Radio, and Ɔdadeɛ Radio Ghana. There's a question for you, Doc, and it's from Nikwe Kuma. You laugh, huh? Yes. He says, Doc, you keep admitting we are not there yet. We are not there yet. What needs to be done practically to get us there?
Two things. First is our institutional reform. Agriculture, as it's structured today in Ghana, is what the British left us. Crop Directorate sits somewhere, engineering sits somewhere, PPMD, irrigation, and crop science. But we have all come to learn that working in that space require us having a unified arrangement that allows us to take the crops program and say, between this period, our target crops are rice, maize, soybeans, the PFJ target crops, and pool our resources to make sure that we have the seed, we have the mechanization, we have all that put together under one program that the ministry directorates work on. So when mechanization is importing, it consults crops and says, no, this and this are the equipment that agronomically we need. The post-harvest guys are there and all that. I think that is one. So I would say we need to restructure. And secondly, the most important thing is that we should put money. We should find our own money as a country and set it to develop agriculture. There's no financial institution in this country today that the regulator in the financial sector allows them to invest in agriculture development. There's none.
What about
ADB?
ADB is a universal bank. Exim hanging in there. EDIVE, we turn into Exim. But you could look around the globe and everybody that wanted to develop agriculture from where we are today to where we want to be created a special entity, most of the time a non-bank financial institution that will be able to support that process. So these are the two elements. On the policy stage, like we are saying, you take, I'm sure, Senior Kwekuma lives in Rome. So he knows this EU Common Agriculture Policy. It doesn't stop at strategy. It tells you explicit what you need to do, not implicit encourage imports. What is encourage imports? Encourage imports? I sit on the radio, do advocacy. Which businessman will do that?
But that's what you seem to be. That's what you seem to be doing now. You are doing advocacy. But so I asked you the question earlier on that you were part of drafting this policy.
Yeah.
Why didn't you speak there the way you are speaking now?
Oh, you ask. You ask anybody. It's the same way I've been speaking.
Yeah,
and now I have decided that it doesn't work.
Oh, then you have welcome home, because this is what I decided 5 years ago.
Yes.
I no longer attend workshops.
Yeah.
I don't go to conferences anymore, because we say the same old things, and then when you come out, nothing has happened.
No, you know, there's a Atta Louise, right? Atta Louise is a Nobel laureate for economic development. Nkrumah brought Atta Louise to Ghana in '67. Atta Louise is the one came up with the informal economy, and he observed it at Makola. Whatever Atta Louise told Nkrumah didn't take it. He went to Malaysia at the same time, and he told them focus. So the Malaysians listened to what he was saying. They picked the palm fruit that has transformed Malaysia from Ghana and Nigeria, and the focus and the strategies to develop. So it's the same for us.
But so what? Do we just throw our hands in despair and leave it as it is? Because that's what everyone seems to be doing.
No.
We talk about this is the reason why I, was looking at what this policy was going to do or it was saying, where we had strategies and specifically identify what needs to be done, as you are saying.
Yeah.
Plan A, plan B, plan C. So in 10 years time we'll be here.
Yeah.
Why is the policy not saying that? And if it is, why are we having difficulty? Because you keep, as Nikwegmo was saying, you say we need to.
You see, the structure of our country, we need a National Planning Development Commission.
Isn't there one?
Yes.
There's one.
We need a National Planning Development Commission that will crack the whip and say
at who?
At the political. We put all the power in the hands of the politicians. We give them a field day. They do whatever they like. It's today that Parliament is shaking its tail small. You know,
so we are rounding up, and so let me just ask the last question. Over the last few weeks, I've seen questions or posts making the rounds that there's going to be an imminent food shortage. Yeah, there's some you going around that store food, buy this, they should buy gari rice, and buy a lot of fish and meat and store, because the coming year is going to be tough. When I hear things like this, sometimes I worry, in the sense that there are people out there who are seriously producing food and not getting the right prices for it, and the food's getting rotten in the hinterland. Yet we are here scaring people in Accra that there's going to be food shortage. The food is there. There's maize, there's rice, but we can't bring it into the cities where people are looking for them.
I think this year, from what I have observed, is that the input supply chain was disrupted. So, if you take a crop like maize, the production in the major season was not much. So today, if you want maize to buy in good quantities, you struggle. You can't find. Rice, is the same, but if you come to our starchy foods, the yam, the cassava, the plantain, those that typically we don't depend on imported inputs. Yes, we do have, and that is where food self-sufficiency becomes critical today as a driver of food security. So if we are able to focus on producing our own local fertilizers, our own local seeds for those that require it, then when there are global interruptions in the supply chain, you don't suffer. That is where we are now. And again, we've been back and forth on seed system development from maybe the 1970s. But today, we still don't have the capacity. If you talk about fertilizer, I don't know. I think the first time I heard we were going to do a fertilizer plant was Kufuor's time. Up to today, So we need to be more aggressive, or just more focused on our efforts on agriculture. Interestingly, every other place where today they can stand on their feet as a country has started. Today, India is the sixth largest economy in the world. Barely 40, 50 years ago, everybody thought India was going to be wiped out of farming, because they couldn't, and they decided mechanization. Yes.
Okay, so we are running out of time, but I want to ask Patrick before we go, if there's one thing in this policy that must be implemented at all costs, in view of all the things that we have said, that will have a domino effect on increased food production, what would that be?
That's a tough question. Well, I would go in for the local manufacturing base. We need to support the local manufacturing base. Like Doctor was saying, we cannot depend so much on the imported stuff. We need to start looking at the local industry to see how we can support the local manufacturing base, because those countries that we buy or we go there to import equipment from all started that way. All of them started that way in terms of mechanization or engineering. The local manufacturing base is what needs to be supported to be able to design and implement or design and fabricate equipment for our farmers for production. So I would strongly recommend that we push for the local manufacturing base, support for the local manufacturing base. Yeah.
Is the policy, is this one thing in the policy where, it's saying we must do this and but that's my question. If there's one thing that the policy must do that will really increase food production, can we find this in the policy? Is it there?
Yes, the policy talks about local manufacture of agricultural machinery. So it highlights, it identifies the category of people that in that stream. So blacksmith, artisans, fabricators. So these areas we need to, just like the way that we have the goldsmith, etc. We also need to support this category of people to be able to design quality equipment for production.
Okay.
So it is in there. It talks about support for local manufacture of agricultural equipment and machinery.
Okay, so I'll just give an opportunity for everybody to make a quick comment, and then we'll quickly close the program.
Yes, just to ask Patrick, is there anything which supports, makes industry lays with our investees in agricultural machinery technology?
Sorry, I could not understand. I cannot understand.
What I mean is that, is there anything in the policy that encourages industry to liaise with our investees in bringing out agricultural machinery technology?
Technical investees, yeah.
Yes. It talks about research and development. So there's in fact, it says that we should, just like the way we have for the crop sector, we have the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, is clamoring for the establishment of agricultural mechanization research institute, where they will look at the research and designs. And then also it talks about the fact that these institutions should also engage with research for developing equipment.
Yeah,
so yes, it's in there.
What I mean is that maybe government giving incentives to industries which would liaise with universities in developing such things.
The universities are mainly for teaching, but the research institutes. So when you talk about Industrial Research Institute, when you talk about Animal Research Institute, so these are institutions that are in for research.
Yeah, but we have technical universities that are actually doing technical training work for the young ones. So when you say it's just for teaching, I'm a bit confused.
I'm saying that the universities is mainly for teaching students, etc. But the research institute, just like if you have CSIR, they have food research. So even CSIR, crops research. So they will bring out the varieties for the farmer, and then the ministry will promote those varieties.
Yeah, but mechanization is a little different. I mean, if we have technical institutions and we're talking about manufacturing industries, and we are looking at artisans like blacksmiths, whatever, who are going to mold and do stuff, then that's the practical aspect of the thing. So yes, you teach them, but they are also learning the practicality of producing the things that we need. Doc.
Yeah,
yes.
I want to add this. See, if you are in the university and you only teach, you perish.
Mm-hmm.
You need to do research, publish. I think one of the things that we can do, and like Emmanuel is asking, all our universities, undergraduate, masters, PhDs, especially those in engineering, who have a project. And so you, Patrick, you did your project. So can we link that to the development of our simple machinery, a plow, a harrow, and that process to start with?
Yeah.
That may not require much money. You need to design. So the students, we get them to design this, and then over time we need to strike that relationship between the research that is done at the university level as well. But I think I agree with Patrick that if there's one thing that we should do, but the way we put it in the policy, it says facilitate private sector involvement in the design, manufacture, and assembly of agricultural machinery. It's too passive. You know, what action is facilitate?
Oh, well, that's all time of perimeters. That is all that time of perimeters. But I am not particularly convinced. If I were a student listening and I was to go take Agric as engineering as or mechanization as a course, I'm not encouraged. You know, I was hoping that this topic we took today would have, you know, convinced a young student or either from the secondary school level or the tertiary level to say, wow, I want to go into Agric mechanization or engineering.
Bazonda, when there are challenges, that means we need you more. So if there are a lot of challenges that we are mentioning that there's a problem, that is where I'm sure I can encourage those who are studying engineering and mechanization to get into it so that they have opportunity to solve these problems.
Spoken like a true engineer. All right. So do we have any messages? Okay. So who is this from? This is Ni. Okay. If we want to effect Ni, I don't know which Ni actually. Okay. It says if we want to effect change, we should never give up advocating and talking. Let's be the change we want to see. We can't give up. Thank you very much. And that those will be our last and concluding words. Thank you all, my guests, Patrick Ohene. Patrick, thank you very much for joining us on the program today. And hopefully, when we invite you next time, you come back and speak to us. Emmanuel Wule, Dr. Sumwa, my co-host Kwame Amakohini. Thank you very much for joining us today. And a quick message. We want to congratulate our NSMQ boys for the cup. Charlie, the 7 came home yesterday finally to the campus, and the welcome was amazing. You know, we had a good celebration. Hopefully we come back next week with another interesting topic. Thank you very much. My name is Johnny Adufening.